Well, first of all, welcome to Long Beach Public Library. This is the Vinyl Listening Lounge on the first floor of the library. It is opened as of October 2023, and we're very excited to have it here. So thank you for joining us.
We sure are excited to be here.
Yeah, I am Tom Wojciechowski.
I'm Allie Blau.
And we both work for the Long Beach Public Library. And we're here today to talk to you about some of our favorite records and some of the favorite records that we have here available to listen to and check out at the Long Beach Public Library. We're going to start with a segment called Generation Education, where we'll have somebody in an album's generation, educate another generation that might not be privy to how amazing that album is on why that album is important, integral, why we have it at the library, why it's amazing, and why everyone should listen to it. So that's what we're going to start with today.
As a Gen X versus
I don't. I'm like 32. There's no name for.
I think you're a millennial.
I'm a late millennial
or elder millennial.
But I don't know. I disagree with whatever you classify me as.
Fine.
So
I don't know that your disagreement is valid, but that's what we're doing here today.
We can agree to disagree.
So I'm going to teach Tom all about one of my favorite albums from the late 80s, Paul's Boutique, which is the Beastie Boys follow-up to their immensely popular License to Ill. What did you think about this album, Tom?
I'm a hip-hop fan, and admittedly, it was kind of strange to me. This album, I never listened to it. It didn't hit for me when it never was the album that I went back to. And so I listened to it, what I think was for the first time with fresh ears, all the way cover to cover when we planned on doing this. And it is amazing.
Isn't it?
I think I had a misconception of the Beastie Boys, just in my head from pop culture or you hear you gotta fight for your right or whatever.
Right.
And I was like, oh, they're frat rap white boy guys.
Right.
And so I just kind of dismissed it. And then I heard this for what was honestly for the first time, and it kind of blew me away.
Absolutely. And I think, so produced by the Dust Brothers, coming off of License to Ill, it was initially a bit of a flop for them because I think it didn't resonate with that punk frat boy, snotty white kid from the Lower East Side vibe. And then it built up so much steam. And I think it's kind of a gauge by which I judge people on, how much do you love Paul's Boutique is, how good we can be friends. Or maybe when I was younger, that was kind of a gauge.
Up until right now, you've significantly judged me up until this point.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, that's
but
good to
now
know.
you've reformed in my eyes. This was one of the albums that I had in my car on a portable CD player, one of 10. This is definitely a desert island disc for me. Quotable, all of the skits, all of the samples are just constantly in my head. I would say at least once a day, someone says something to me and I'm running a lyric from this album. Now it's considered a cornerstone of hip hop, and I'm glad you understand why now.
When did this come? Was this 89? Is that when this album came out?
That sounds about right.
I think that's in my head is License to Ill was 86 and then this was 89.
Yeah.
So this is on the forefront. I mean, I think I did a little research and just from knowing hip hop history or whatever, this was kind of on the forefront of bringing hip hop from what was an underground, predominantly niche art form to the mainstream, on radio to breaking through. That's what I think of when I'm thinking about this album now. Is that?
I think License to Ill was more singles driven on the radio, and I don't think there was anything from this record that made it to mainstream radio. I could be wrong. But it wasn't regarded in the same, anywhere near the same as License to Ill. And even the albums after had hits off of them, and I don't think this one did. The major thing that we were talking about earlier in regards to the album that you introduced me to, Madvillainy, there's an estimated 100 to 300 samples on this record.
That's insane.
And if you look at the Wikipedia page and see where all the samples came from, it's such a deep dive. There's so many great records that they sampled. And even today, I'm oh, now I know where that came from.
One thing I do know about this album before even listening to it was I'm pretty sure the litigation for the album, has its own Wikipedia page.
Okay.
So it's like it has started off this entire wave of like clearing samples because they didn't clear any of these samples of the 1 to 300 samples on this record.
Yeah.
Like they were just like, oh, you know, we're repurposing this as art.
Right.
And then this started a bunch of like legal cases that was like, oh, actually, if you take that drum riff, you have to pay that person for that riff. So
Led
that is
Zeppelin
one
really
thing.
needed their money. So I'm
broke.
so glad that Led Zeppelin got it. They definitely needed it. We've had a conversation about when you hear a song and it makes you think of someone, even if it's like 20 years later. John Paul Lee from Mineola, if you're out there, every single time I hear the sounds of science, I'm still seeing you wherever you are. Just permanently in my brain. High Plains Drifter, Sound of Science, Eggman, those are just my top tracks. Was there anything that stood out for you?
Eggman actually was the one that hit for me. Like I listened to it. I was working when I listened to it, and I just had it playing cover to cover. And that was like actually a song where I like went back to the tab of like, oh, I need to look at what song's playing right now and run it back. So that was. It's funny that you said that's one of your favorite tracks because that's one that hit for me too.
Yeah, suckers, they come a dime a dozen. That's constant. Why is it in my head? I don't know. All the time.
It's the way music works. It's the beauty of it.
So,
did this album hit for you when it came out? Like, did you hit the ground running? Like, were you a fan or did it take time to grow on you?
No, I wasn't. That's a really good question. I think because I knew that it was cool and I wanted to be cool.
So you kind of like, you're like, oh, there was this buzz around this album.
Right, but it was definitely after. It was not
and they're
not
like New
in
York
1989.
too. They're New York.
Yeah.
So like you're New York, so it's like, oh, this New York group is like taking the world by storm and that's what got you.
Like, so when License to Ill came out, I was a kid, you know, so like I knew of it from the radio and Fight for Your Right. And then, so when this came out and it wasn't popular like that, there's no way that I knew about it. It was definitely when I was a teenager, probably got it, you know, 10 for $1 from
did you
Columbia
eventually
House.
buy it?
Like 100% 10 for $1. Because I knew, you know, as a kid, I was like always reading Rolling Stone and like I knew what was highly regarded. And this was one of them. So that's how it came to my attention.
And for good reason. It still holds the test of time.
Absolutely.
In 2024, I listened to it with fresh ears and it like is still relevant, which is wild.
Yeah. It's a top 5 for me, if not top 3.
The album that I was absolutely appalled that Allie had never heard before or like even listened to or like tangentially heard one song from the record. It's kind of underground, I understand, but is Madvillainy by Madvillain. And Madvillain is a collaboration between the producer Madlib and the rapper MF Doom. They are two of the best to ever do it in their respective genres. Like MF Doom is like your favorite rapper's favorite rapper. Like every person talks about him and points to him as a point of inspiration for what they make and what they want to accomplish. And then Madlib has been doing like, it's the funniest thing with Madlib. I'll give you a little bit of history because I'm a nerd. So like Madlib is one of the most prolific hip hop producers, but hates rap music and like doesn't listen to a lot of mainstream rap music. Like he loves jazz. He loves like all these, he has the most eclectic record collection in history. Like he's absolutely amazing. I'm obsessed with Madlib. And so this record started being recorded in 2002. So MF Doom was in a very popular 90s hip hop group called KMD with his brother. His brother was tragically killed. He was hit by a car on Hempstead Turnpike, and MF Doom disappeared from the music scene for like a decade. So they were like on this up and coming record label, like put out a hit single and then just disappeared. And then he came back onto the scene and started recording some solo stuff and then started recording with Madlib. And both of them at this time hated hip hop. Like MF Doom is infamously quoted in an interview saying like, I don't even like rap. This is just my job. So like, I think that was like a little bit of an answer and like a persona that he was putting on. Because like nobody is this good at something if they don't genuinely love it.
Right.
And you hear, if you listen to the words of even this record, like he genuinely loves wordplay and words and rapping and rhyming and the art of it. And you could just hear it in every line. There's like this internal rhyme scheme that's insane. He is so ahead for 2002 recording and released in 2005 eventually. This is a timeless record. I'm absolutely convinced that in 1,000 years, people will still be able to look at this and be like, this was hip hop. It is everything that you could ever want from it. So 2002, Madlib was like, I'm quitting hip hop. And the label that he worked for, Stone Throw Record, was like, you're actually kind of the best producer alive. Can you not? What can we do to make you? It's like, who are your dream collabs? And he named like a couple people, and he named MF Doom. In later years, Madlib was like, yeah, I named MF Doom because I was like, there's no way they're ever going to get him to do a record with me. So Stone's Throw was like going bankrupt. And they're like, we need to get these two most talented people that we have in the same room together. So they the owner of Stone's Throw borrowed money, bought a bunch of weed and a plane ticket for MF Doom to fly out to Cali to just go meet in the Stone's Throw headquarters. And Madlib had a studio in the basement. So just hang out for a week. We'll pay for it. We'll buy you guys weed and we'll see what happens. They flew him out in 2002 and they just clicked instantly. And they started working on this record. They worked on it for like a year and a half, 2 years. Madlib went to Brazil and he loved crate digging in exotic countries. So he would just like go, and he spent a couple weeks in Brazil. He was working on some music. He found a bunch of eclectic records and was producing beats for this. Like 2 of them ended up on this record itself with a portable record player and his SP303 in his hotel room in Brazil. And he had made they had a bunch of songs recorded, and the demo tape, his hotel room got broken into. The demo tape was stolen, and then it got leaked on the internet.
Ouch.
And then MF Doom and Madlib were like, I'm done with this project.
Oh no.
Not releasing it. It's been leaked. Fans were coming up to them at shows like, this new record is amazing. And they're like, we didn't release that record. And they hated it. They took a year off. They went to go do their own things. Madlib, he has this thing called Yesterday's New Quintet. It's a fake band that he just produces. He does all the instrumentation and just makes jazz music under this fake quintet. So he did some Yesterday's New Quintet stuff. MF Doom went and recorded 2 albums under alter egos, King Ghidorah and Victor Vaughn, both of which make an appearance on Madvillainy. Part of which why he's so amazing. He raps as like 4 different characters, and they're 4 better rappers than most rappers in history. So he went and recorded 2 solo albums with characters. And then Stone's Throw was like, that record was amazing that you guys were working on. Do you think you'd want to maybe try and finish it? And they're like, all right, fine. And they went back in the studio, but 2 years had passed, and the original demos, and you could listen to them online, Doom had this like energetic, sort of high-pitched, upbeat delivery. Mm-hmm. And he was like, that's not me anymore. That's not this record. This record needs to be dark. So he re-recorded his verses with like this very gritty, grimy, raw delivery, and like on an intentionally crappy microphone to add some compression and some clipping. And if you listen to some tracks that were re-recorded, it is night and day. It is insane to me that even like the first record existed, knowing what this record is now. And it is exactly what it needed.
Yeah, I can't imagine
it through all of these. The context of this record is what makes it so amazing for me. I mean, other than the music itself, which is perfect, but like all of the things that had to happen for 2 people who didn't even like hip hop to end up making the best hip hop record, in my opinion, of all time. It is absolute magic and it is timeless. And like the story, I love stories. So like when I'm like, oh, they recorded this in their basement and they were broke, I'm like, oh, that sounds better than a dude who's on his 3rd record deal and was a millionaire. Like maybe it's a psychological thing, but the context of this album on top of the immense quality is just phenomenal. So that's the history of this. Real quick, I'll go through the music and I'll take too much time.
It's an underdog tale.
It is one of the most like heavily sample-based albums of all time, and it is hysterical. We chose these records separately. This was just 2 records that Allie and I both loved that were in this room at the Long Beach Public Library. So she chose Paul's Boutique and I chose Madvillain. I couldn't think of a single record in here that I would like to talk about more. So I chose this record and she chose Paul's Boutique, and it was just absolutely serendipitous because MF Doom has gone on record and talked about how Paul's Boutique was one of the biggest inspirations for him ever, production-wise, rapping-wise. He was like, it changed the way that people approached making music and sampling, and he loved it, and he always quoted it as an inspiration. So like literally, Paul's Boutique walked, like Madvillainy is standing on the shoulders of the Beastie Boys to be as great as it is, and it could not have existed without that album. So it's kind of amazing that you chose that and I chose this.
Yeah.
Because, sampling was like that entire record. There's over 100 to 300 samples on that record.
It's listed as 276.
So there's over 250 samples on Madvillainy, but that's just the samples that people have figured out. Right. There is an insane amount of layers. There is so much going on in this record and also like Madlib's crate digging is unparalleled. On this record, there is hula music resampled into some of the hardest rap beats of all time. There are theme songs from 70s shows. There is a Brazil telenovela theme song that is like one of my favorite flips ever made. So like there's these records that like 50 of them were ever made, and he finds something in it that is perfect and flipped it into one of the most like iconic instrumentals of all time. So like they have said, both Madlib and MF Doom, that without the Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique, like they couldn't have made this record. And part of what makes this record so amazing is like these references and how tight it is. And there's so many. I have discovered amazing music because I was like, oh, what is this weird guitar riff here? And then you look it up online and you're like, oh, it's from like a thing called Hula Rock, which is actually a song that they sampled on this record. And then you look up this Hula Rock record and it's some band that no one's ever heard of from 1971. And you're like, oh, this is actually one of the best records I've ever heard in my life. So Madlib is a perennial music nerd, and I think that bleeds through so much on this record that like literally I've listened to this record 1,000 times, and I listened to it this morning and I was like, I heard something that I had not heard before. And I think that's a gift that keeps on giving to me. It's something that I love so much that every time I go back to, it can give me something more. And I would recommend this album to anybody, not like hip hop fans or rap fans. Like, I think this is a foundational record in music, and it will be for a long time. And I love this record. And then on top of Madlib, the music, the production, MF Doom is like the best rapper. His rhyme schemes are insane. His wordplay, it's double entendres, it's triple entendres, it's references. Like in the same line, he'll be rapping as a character, talking shit about MF Doom himself. Like he has a younger character named Victor Vaughn, and in one of these songs, MF Doom steals Victor Vaughn's girlfriend. And this whole song is Victor Vaughn just talking about how he's gonna kill MF Doom. And it's just amazing. And like there's references and layers, and then at the same time he's talking about like Muttley the dog from those old 70s Hanna-Barbera cartoons, and like also really pertinent little one-liners about like the state of the world or like a little political insight. And it's just all wrapped into, and it all rhymes and is cohesive and it is with a purpose. And I think it's like the best record ever made.
You feel a little bit passionately about
a little bit, just
this.
a little
just
bit.
Like a tiny bit of
I
passion.
only stopped because I realized that this should only be like 10 minutes. So, but
Keep going. Well, in listening to this, and as soon as I put it on, I was like, oh, okay, no, I totally get it. They go hand in hand. Like you could see how they are so similar stylistically, and the sampling and the types of samples from TV shows to guitar riffs, it's so similar. And I think the lyricism of their rapping, both MF Doom and the Beastie Boys, very similar. It's like very dense lyrically. I love that.
oh, it's like a thesis. Like
I love that.
I still am hearing, I'm like, oh, he actually meant this by that, you know? Like there's, and I think it is a perfect art form for like that witticism and cleverness. Like you sort of hide it in what could be like a raw or like bravado filled art form. And it's like, oh no, they're actually geniuses. Like this is natural. This is current poetry. That's like modern poetry.
I mean, I don't want to dad rock this, but you could kind of see the similarity from like a Steely Dan, just that dense wordplay.
I'll have to trust you on that one.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of
maybe
episodes of this podcast. So I was looking up, I don't know if you're familiar with there's an app and a website called Who Sampled.
Yes, I love that.
And
website.
I was checking out a couple of the tracks, all caps, which has an awesome riff from a song called Bumpin' Bus Stop, which now I'm going to have to listen to all the time because that is a sick song.
You can, if you look up any one, like most of these songs have like minimum 8 samples in them.
Yeah.
I've seen upwards of 35. And 35. And that was like recognized samples. They're sampling like old comic book read aloud records. They're sampling the most insane eclectic things. So I'm sure there's way more than the amount of samples that are actually like recognized on the record.
But I was like, oh, this is so great to have a path of discovery through this record. Like there's Airport Love Theme on Curls. I'm guessing he's like a Brazilian dude.
Yes, that was from Brazil.
organ, something going on there.
I think that was actually the telenovela theme song.
I loved that.
Was that
I
they flipped into curls.
I have to add that or be on the lookout for it.
There was a 70s Western show called Ironside.
Yeah.
And so I'd never heard of or seen that show before. But they flipped it into Rhinestone Cowboy, which is the closing track on this album. And also, like, I think it's a perfect masterpiece of a song. Like, there's 2 songs in it, and like it ends, and then he comes back and talks about the record leaking, and like he is meta talking about the record on the record itself, and it's amazing. But they flipped this the theme song to Ironside to 2 different parts in that song, and at some point, like, a rerun of it was playing on TV, and like my ears perked up like a dog who just heard the can opener, and I was like, what? Someone's listening to MF Doom? And it was like this 70s Western show, and it was like halftime, and you could tell that it was there, but like he made it better. He made it into a masterpiece that like resonated with me. But yeah, Ironside theme song. There's a bunch of insane samples on this and on the Beastie Boys record that like I'm sure people in 10 years people will be like, oh, did you know that they sampled this or they found this or they'll find more and more records of what it is. But yeah, it's Hula Rock and Ironside's theme song and like a record made in '89 about comic book villains and like all of these like and my favorite one more thing about Madlib. My favorite thing about his production style is how he takes all of these disparate elements. He will take a telenovela theme song and a record about comic books, and it all sounds like it's from the same source. It all sounds like it's from the same record, the same instrument in the same studio. Like, it is magic.
It's real artistry. Also, I checked out the video for All Caps. All caps when you spell the man name. Amazing. And that's we kind of lost that art of videos being on. I'm not going to be the old person that's talking about the loss of MTV, but it was amazing to see that so much care went into that video and the artwork, and it was so beautiful. And I wish I would have seen that at maybe when this record came out, and maybe it would have enlightened me, to check Madvillainy out.
Better late than never.
Better late than never.
Yes, they've got one record. It's perfect. They don't need to do anything else.
That's it.
All right, so we're here with Sarah, a youth services librarian here at the Long Beach Public Library, and she's here to tell us what her favorite record or one of her favorite records is in the listening lounge.
I am here to do that.
Thank you for being here today, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Really
First
great.
Special guest.
I'm honored that it's me.
The most special guest.
I'm gonna hold you to that one. So yeah, it's weird being a youth service librarian and I'm coming here to talk about Serge Tankian, but we're going to do what we're going to do here. I want to preface this by saying I probably have the weirdest music taste known to man. I listen to quite literally everything ranging from K-pop to System of a Down. So
I think that makes you a perfect librarian,
That
actually.
is a range.
Yeah.
it's a range. It's especially when you're on a playlist and you're hearing BTS and then next comes up Metallica. That's
should we have a K-pop record here? That's a conversation for another time.
We should.
We'll talk.
We will. So I'm going to talk about System of a Down. I don't know if any of you have heard this album in length.
Not cover to cover. Definitely not.
I have never heard it cover to cover. I'm going to take it home with me tonight,
I think you should, because there are some really good hits on here. You got your basic little chop suey, Toxicity, the ones that they've been in TikToks and all that stuff. But like, just to hear Prison Song for the first time, I want you guys to tell me what you think, because it is something.
Okay.
I'm excited for it.
So I have a bit of a personal history with this album.
Hit me with it.
And I'll tell you what. I was the weird kid in elementary school that knew all the words to chop suey.
How did you come upon?
So my dad, who is a quite reserved man, very quiet. If you're listening, Dad, love ya. This was his workout album.
Oh, nice.
Interesting.
I grew up in the early 2000s, so when I was downstairs in the basement playing and he was on his Nordic track, that's how old I feel right now. He was blasting System of a Down on cassette.
I was like, well, modernize. He was on his Peloton in
Right,
the
he's
basement.
the Peloton man, Michael. And so I remember my mom being like, I don't think they should be listening to this, a little angry.
Oh.
And my dad's like, it's fine. And then I'm sitting there in like second grade being like, oh my, this is a good song. To the point where it influenced me in music class in second grade to do a report on One by Metallica.
That's amazing.
So that's also a story
In the
for
second
another
grade.
day.
Is your father so proud of what he created?
He was very proud when I brought this album home a couple months ago when I started to collect. And I was like, I bought the best album known to man. He's like, what is that? And I said, Toxicity. And he was like, you know what? Yeah.
He's like, all right, maybe I've done all right by this kid.
So this album, for those of you who haven't listened to it, is something I can't really explain. You know, he's Serj Tankian. They're Armenian. They're Armenian American. He influences a lot of Armenian folk music into his metal. So I wouldn't even classify this as like the basic metal. This is a new metal. This is a weird one. His wordplay is phenomenal. He goes there and you listen to him say something and you're like, did he just say that? But you go through the song and you're like, oh, okay, I guess he did. And yeah, I agree with you, Serj. So,
let's see. Are there lyrics in this?
I don't know. We got to pull a good one out, though.
And they're like super politically motivated, right? Like that's what I do know about System of a Down.
There's the lyrics.
Amazing. So you can sit on the couch.
Yeah,
really
like
deep dive into the lyrics.
I'm like, Prison Song is, if you are anti-establishment,
of course,
the way to go.
If we are anything at a public library, it's anti-establishment.
The chorus of the song is they're trying to build a prison for you and me to live in.
Right. My teenage self would have.
It's called America.
That. Growing up with, as everybody has their emo phase. My emo phase
still in it, Sarah.
It hasn't ended yet.
I'm seeing Blink-182 in July. I know I'm still there, but I think coming off this album from a tween and being like, they're going to build a prison and they're going to put me and you in it. That had too much influence as me as a child. And I think that's why everybody needs to listen to it. I think you hear Chop Suey and TikToks now. I was just off camera talking to Allie about how they got some guy on TikTok covering Chop Suey and Toxicity as B-52s. So it's crossing all these boundaries. I'm going to send it to you.
I love that it's still current and it's still bringing in listeners.
Because unfortunately, they, System of a Down, as great as they were in the early 2000s, post hiatus in the 2010s, not the same thing.
Not the same
thing.
Time is undefeated.
Yeah, unfortunately so. But I urge everybody to not just listen to the title tracks. I think you got to listen to the deep cuts for System of a Down.
Love it. And you could come and listen to it on our incredible sound system
Absolutely.
With sick headphones and just blast your eardrums out, which is probably the way they intended it to be.
That is the way Serj intended it.
What's in the box?
Every month we're trying to add, we have a suggestions box here at the Long Beach Public Library Listening Lounge. We're trying to, respond to the needs of our patrons, but also add records that we love and think are important as well. So we figure we'll show you every month what some new stuff is that we got and just get you hyped about so you can come in here and listen to it yourself. What do we have this month, Alex?
So very special thanks to Ryan, one of our patrons and listeners in the Vinyl Listening Lounge, donated Honky Chateau by Elton John, a newly crowned EGOT winner. This is a phenomenal record. His 5th album featuring such hits as Rocket Man. I mean, come on, you can't beat that one.
That's a good one.
And my favorite, Mona Lisa's and Mad Hatter's, which I realized I'm obsessed with because of the movie Almost Famous. So check out Honky Chateau by Elton John. This one, Iron Chic, local Long Island band. This was donated from my own personal collection because I feel like we need to bump up our local artists. Also a suggestion that someone left for us. If you're into pop punk, emo, rock, check out Iron Chic. Amazing name.
Yeah, also a very popular wrestler.
And of course, we have Talking Heads 77. You have to have a Talking Heads record in your collection, or else what are you doing? Am I right?
You are correct.
I know. My favorites. The book I read, Hello, I'm a Librarian. Of course, that's going to be my favorite. And Psycho Killer. This is their debut. They were almost signed and then didn't take that deal. Spent a year working together to get this album before they started recording. And lived in a loft all together for $250 a month in New York City. So
this was in the 1800s?
It was in the 1800s. Okay. The horse-drawn carriage was walking past CBGB's. It's a post-punk masterpiece, in my humble opinion.
And in mine as well. And if you've never checked out a Talking Heads record, I think this is the perfect place to start.
This is a great place to start. I think we should have all the Talking Heads records, but our budget may not allow for that, but we'll see.
When we have infinite money.
Infinite money that's coming down the pike.
Thank you so much for joining us for our first episode of Live from the Listening Lounge, from the Long Beach Public Library Listening Lounge. Just so happy to be able, in this amazing space, to be able to talk to you about music that I love, that we love. So really appreciate you checking this out. And we hope that you come down to the library, you check out some records, you can check them out and listen to them at home, or you could sit right where I'm sitting right now and listen to it yourself. You know, come sit right here and listen to Madvillainy. I highly recommend it. So thank you so much, and come down to the Long Beach Public Library.
And don't forget to come join us at our next Vinyl Collectors Club on February 8th, Thursday at 7 p.m. We hang out, we talk about records, people bring in albums from their own collection. Our theme this month is love songs. You can interpret that as songs about love or songs about lost love.
I think the second one's probably better.
Second one, definitely.
That's the record I'm bringing in. But yeah, stop by the library, come see the room, come to the Vinyl Collectors Club, and have a great day. Thanks so much.